And welcome to the podcast. Welcome back to the podcast, the Broad Street Review podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. I'm still trapped in this box. I can't get out of here. I know you've seen me out in the world. For some reason, I'm stuck in here, but I can always bring guests in. They can leave, and then I'm stuck in space. But today, we are virtually transported to Hedgerow Theatre to hear about the newest adaptation of Little Women by Kate Hamill. This was adapted from the novel by Louisa May Alcott, and it is on stage through December 28th. If you haven't seen the show, what have you been doing? Go see the show. Go get tickets. Listen, while you're having this conversation, go over to hedgerowtheatre.org. That's theater, REORG, and buy your tickets. Tickets plural, because theater is more fun with a +1. Today, I am in the virtual studio with the director and the music director of this production. I'm here with Abby Weissman and my own partner, Matthew Mastronardi. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having us both. Super excited to be
Yes,
here.
thank you so much.
So I saw the production. I thought it was great and said we should definitely have a chat. Something that's really interesting about this is that there is a musical version of Little Women, but this is not it. So Abby, before we dig into Little Women, tell us about Abby Weissman.
Sure. So my name's Abby Weissman. I use she, her pronouns. I've been in Philadelphia for about 8 years now. I'm a director, intimacy professional, arts administrator, arts educator. I do a lot of different things, wear a lot of different hats, company member at Rev Shakespeare. I initially came to the Philadelphia region through an apprenticeship with the Art and Theater Company, so I am an APA alum. For all folks listening out there that might be related to that. Just love making plays, telling stories with people. It's really important to me to have a joyful, creative place. And so that's what I try to cultivate anywhere I go.
All right. And Matthew, tell us about Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matthew Mastronardi. I use he, him pronouns, and I've been in Philly ever since I went to U Arts back in the day. I am a music director, an actor, and I have been working at numerous theaters, and I am also a performing arts educator and have been doing that for many years as well. And I love working with actor musicians. I've been an actor musician myself many times, and that's why I was very excited to be a part of this project, to work with other actor musicians and to create music to tell stories is a big passion of mine. So I was so excited that Abby approached me about this and we got to work together on this.
Cool. So Abby, tell us about Little Women, particularly this adaptation.
Sure. So the adaptation that is currently running at Hedgerow is Kate Hamill's adaptation of Little Women. It's a beautiful adaptation of the story. I think there's a lot in it, both for folks who have already known and loved the story, and it's a great introduction to people who've never heard the story before or don't have it as a part of their history and understanding. The story puts the focus on the relationship between Jo and Beth as sisters. So the story begins with them, we check in with them throughout, and then it also ends with them. It has this sense of almost being a memory play. The first and last words of the play are, "Jo, tell me a story." And then the last words, it ends with, "Tell it again." So there's this sense of creating a world for someone that you love, and that act of creative storytelling as really, again, centering this relationship. There's also some changes that are made, so the story does not cover the entirety of the story of the novel, and it's a great adaptation in terms of subtly leaning towards this exploration that Jo has with gender identity throughout as well. So there's themes that definitely resonate a little bit more with a modern audience, as well as being very faithful to the sense of joy, the sense of family, this energy of growing up, and the pain and the happiness that that brings throughout as well.
So what were your first thoughts reading the script for the first time? What was going on in your head?
Oh my gosh, well, I was just honored. Marcy over at Hedgerow sent it over to me. So we'd had a conversation about the kinds of stories that I like to direct. And I was like, well, I love classics, but I specifically love classics with a little bit of a feminist or more inclusive lens on them. And when I read it, I was just so astounded. I also grew up in a family of sisters. I'm one of 3 sisters, not one of 4 sisters. But hearing that Hedgerow was interested in doing this play, hearing that they were interested in doing it for the holiday, mostly I was just like so freaking excited. And the play, if you'll see it, it covers so much story. The scenes are like so packed in with emotion and with everything coming through. I really was, I was just on the ride. I was on the ride with them. I was so excited to be considered for it. So excited thinking about it. Really just was a very motivating force to tell this story and like usher a new generation into the story with modern values as well.
So when did you first think about what if we added music to this, and how to do that? How did that come about?
Yeah. So there's a good amount of music in the play already because many of the characters are themselves musicians, specifically the character Beth, who is the sister who sometimes fades a little bit into the background, is a little bit more shy. Again, like I said, this adaptation really focuses on her, and Beth has two main creative loves, which are flowers and playing the piano. And so, as we were thinking about the design and aesthetic world for the play, I wanted to make sure that we were honoring the things that were the most Beth that we could find. So, in addition to that, there's several moments in the play where it's like this character plays the piano, and it is important to the scene that this character can play the piano, and this is the piece of music they're playing, and this is how it influences it. And so with those two things, I started thinking like, well, we're definitely going to want to cast at least 2 or 3 actors who can play some instruments so we can get those moments that are required for the story. And then we were also having conversations about doing this play at the holidays. And there are aspects to it that are really tragic. If you don't know, story's been out for a long time, sorry. If you don't know, Beth dies at some point during the play. And the way that this adaptation works, that actually happens right at the end. And so we were having conversations about if we're asking people to bring their families to this, and it ends in this tragic way, like, what are we leaving them with? And so I started thinking about how to use some of the themes and language of the story to help kind of care for folks instead of coming to this dark emotional place and then just being like, all right, see you later, donate, buy tickets for next season. Like, what can we do to uplift people and to create a sense of sharing and of community and of being held before we go? And so I came to this idea that I wanted to have the story end and then have the actors come back to stage and sing songs with the audience to celebrate the holiday, to celebrate the time of year. And so once I landed on that, I was like, okay, great. We're not getting a sound designer. We're getting a music director. We're going to have someone who can help us shape this capstone, this like ending to the play, as well as all of the music throughout. And then actually, as I was having all of these thoughts, happened to run into you and Matthew out in the world. And Matthew was like, well, I love historic Christmas carols. Like, this sounds so exciting. I would love to be a part of it. Right as I was at that point of being like, who do we know who's going to have the skill set to want to do this kind of like underscoring work and the scene work and this thing at the end? And so, yeah, it just felt very serendipitous. And that's how we got there. Long journey, but we made
And
it.
there you are. Matthew, tell the audience the difference between a musical and a play with music, because when you're out there and you realize that there's music in it, the default is that it is a musical, but there are some specifics that separate a musical from a play with music.
I would say the biggest thing is that the songs in a musical help to advance the plot, and they come from the internalized emotions of the characters. So that's where the musical is, versus a play with music. Music helps to tell the story, and it is part of the story. Like Abby was saying, there are some specific moments where we hear the character of Laurie play a piece of music, and it is heard outside of Laurie's house, and Joe speaks of that song, and the characters talk about music and things like that. So music is essential to the story here of this play version of Little Women, versus a musical where we hear more internalized feelings and emotions coming up through the song.
Great. So talk about, Matthew, talk about from your perspective in this rehearsal process, talk about how you wade through this to add music into this play, because it's a play with music. So the structure of carrying this, it's not a musical rehearsal. So talk about that uniqueness, and then we'll go into some of the choices that you added into this production.
So I think there's a lot of layers of uniqueness about our production. Sometimes you have like specific musicians for this particular type of thing, like they sit backstage or off stage or to the side. But here we utilize the actors as the musicians. So not only do they have to focus on their role, but they also have to focus on performing the music for each performance. And so in rehearsals, a lot of it was I had thought about different songs, and most of the time that I spent on working on Little Women was with Abby. We had a lot of meetings, a lot of different discussions to see what is needed for each moment. How can we use songs of the time? How can we use what the playwright prescribed for these moments too, to help tell the story and to utilize the skills of the actors? So a lot of the time I was in rehearsal, I was trying to learn the abilities of the actors as musicians. So what could they play? What could they excel at, to make sure that they felt confident and strong in performing the music? So I wanted to approach it from what they can bring to this music and make sure to challenge them at the same time, but also to make sure they felt really great about adding this musical element. So a lot of the arrangements came from working directly with the actors, working in the room. Yeah.
Did the script lend to ideal placement of songs, or did you have to just think about, what, this will be a good place to put something?
Yeah, so there was a mixture of that. A lot of the music in the play was specific to what Kate had written. So there's a lot of use of Battle Hymn of the Republic, which was a huge song during the time of the story. And then there was other moments like the scene with Laurie playing the piano. And so I did some research of classical music. What kind of song would the character Laurie learn? He's like a brooding boy at the time he was playing that. So I found a song that sort of what Kate had described. I found a song by Schumann called First Loss. And I thought that was a great connection to the like sort of loss of your first love, although Joe doesn't pass away or anything like that, but they are never like in love in that way. So I thought that was like a fun connection to have. The piece is called First Loss, and it's a very like sad and brooding song, but which was also part of prescribed by the playwright. So to add that in. And there were other moments where I had discussed with Abby, and since everyone was so brilliantly musical, I was like, maybe I can write a theme that comes from the story that sort of is a timeless sort of sound and sort of connects the sisters together, especially Beth and Joe. And so that came from discussions with Abby and I about where else can we put music? How else can we have music in the play? So I had written this theme to be used throughout the play, specifically when there was big moments with Beth and Joe, and also Beth and Joe could play that theme to introduce the piece at the beginning of the piece. So there was a good mixture of moments that we created, Abby and I created for the piece, and a lot of musical moments that were already written into the play.
Great. Abby, tell us about this cast.
My gosh, they're just the best. So the play calls for 9 actors, which is pretty large for a regional theater cast. There are the 4 sisters who are not doubled, as well as Laurie Lawrence, who Matthew has already talked about, who is their neighbor and kind of falls in love with Joe throughout the play, has relationships with the other sisters as well. And then in addition to those 5, we have 4 more cast members who are all doubled and play a variety of different characters. So I won't go through all of them individually, but we kind of knew that those 4 other cast members who weren't necessarily going to be in as many scenes, speaking as many lines, were going to be our primary musicians for the piece. So during casting, we did ask everybody to, if they could play instruments, bring in those instruments for us and play a holiday song of any kind. And if they didn't have instruments that they could play, we said, hey, can you just come on in and sing for us? Which ended up being such a delightful time just to kind of get folks up and working. And it's a really beautiful mix of talent that is younger and up and coming in Philadelphia. All of these girls are sisters. If you don't know them, you should know them. Marissa Emerson, Olive Gallagher, Minu Purshariarty, and Jamaica Monet Wilson are our 4 sisters. Leo Mock playing Laurie. There's a fabulous actress named Emily Grace Murray who's playing our Marmee. Emily Grace is not necessarily as musical, and we just needed her warmth in the cast. So we knew when we were casting, we were going to be looking for a balance of who were going to be those stronger musicians and who are going to be those folks that were like, we got to have you here no matter what. So we can create a kind of well-rounded ensemble. And then rounding out our cast, we have Bob Wyke, who's playing Mr. Lawrence and the Doctor, and Robert March, who is a fabulous guitarist, and so ends up playing guitar for most of the show. Catherine Perry playing Hannah, who is the maid for the March family, as well as the messenger and Mrs. Mingott, very uppity, one of the employers of the girls, who became our music captain and is someone who Matthew and I have both worked with before. They were very, very helpful in terms of keeping the cast on track with getting everything complicated together. Once it gets to the point where you're like, this is our 7th arrangement of Battle Hymn of the Republic, and it's slightly different than all the last 6 that came before, helpful to have that person. And then James Riley rounds out our cast as Mr. Brooks, who is Meg's love interest, and James is taking on a huge portion of the musical load in this show as well, is a bassist, plays the banjo. Anything else instrumentally he's doing in the play? Singing.
A lot of singing, yeah.
A lot of singing. And so we really came to kind of rely on one another for different talents and different skills. It was very helpful to have folks who are at a variety of different levels musically be able to come together and kind of make this happen. Even Marissa, who plays Jo and is in pretty much every single scene in the play, was like, have to play, plays clarinet, plays piano, plays all these instruments, really wanted to be involved musically. And we just had to be like, I'm sorry, you could do 2 things because you have to say lines the entire rest of the time as we go. But they're just fabulous. They really, the warmth and heart of the entire group, I think just radiates throughout the piece to anybody that comes to see it. So yeah, they're special. They're special. More than you asked for, Darnell, but I love them all so much.
That's wonderful because they are a great ensemble. There's a moment towards the end that feels like a beautiful family portrait when they all come together, kind of center stage in this beautiful embrace. Let's talk about the design of the show. The Hedgerow has this beautiful rustic feel to it already, and I feel like every production of Little Women I've seen has kind of been in that kind of feels like it's in a barn or some real classic rustic space. But talk about how you set the stage for this moment.
Sure. So, like I mentioned earlier, we really took a lot of inspiration for the design from the character Beth and the character Beth's interests. There's also a scene early on in the play where Marmee, the mother, explains to several of the children that they are all like flowers. They need different things to grow. It's natural to have different needs, and it's natural to care for people with different needs in different ways. This became a metaphor that was really central to my understanding of the piece as a whole. It also incorporates the queer themes in a way that I think is an inclusive and soft way to land for folks who are coming in potentially with a little bit more prejudice, to be able to look at folks and say, you know, maybe this kid, this trans kid, this gender questioning kid just needs a different thing to grow than these other kids might. And it put that in a place where it feels neutral and natural and normal to have these different people with different needs. So kind of to highlight that, we wanted the whole space to feel like it was covered in flowers and have that metaphor be something that's really alive. It's also just interesting to look at. All of the flowers, especially in the winter, having greenery and growth everywhere, was just really exciting to kind of incorporate that. The play also calls for a portrait of the March girls. So our scenic designer, Sarah Shunke, and I ended up creating this kind of framework that looks as though it's the March household, which is our primary place, primary setting for the show, but created with these frames that were for the most part empty, one of them full with the portrait of the girls all gathered around the piano, of course, music being so central, and flowers adorning everything to remind us that wherever we are in our stage of life, it's a beautiful place to be. The frames also, to me, having them hanging and empty, we wanted to create this kind of veil that some of the characters could be behind. So they have varying levels of presence with one another. Beth, especially, as she gets sick, starts to fade from the family. But we actually had that actor, Olive, not leave the stage for most of the second act and instead watch from behind the frames. So it gives the audience access to seeing what that character is feeling. They're slipping away from life in a way, but they're still there. They're still remembered beautifully. They're still in a place of honor. It's not like receding, hidden, gone away, forgotten. So thinking about all of those things, that's kind of where we ended up. And then knowing that there is the March house, Jo's writing desk, Beth's piano, kind of have their own location. And then there's the house where the Lawrences live, which is where Laurie grows up. It's lonelier. It's populated primarily by men. We have platforms that kind of represent those two different worlds on either side as well, so we can move between those as we go from place to place. Costume-wise, we also took inspiration from the floral theme. So the girls, if you'll notice in that scene with Marmee, are all referenced to be a different flower. Beth is referenced to be a violet, Amy, the youngest sister, is referenced as a rose, and Meg, the eldest, is referenced as a daisy. So our costume designer, Lee Paradise, was like, they're all going to have green bottoms, like a stem of a flower, and then their tops all represent in various ways the colors of that flower that aligns with them. So you can take a look out for that too. Lee also had the brilliant idea. I kind of said, I want them to be flowers. Here's what's in the text. Like, show me what you got. And Lee came back and was like, I think that Amy, especially because she's so young, and Amy has this arc where she really becomes more of an adult and more of a woman throughout the play. Lee was like, I want her to add layers in the same way that a rosebud starts very, very small. And then layers get added to it throughout, and the colors get darker as that rosebud matures and grows up. And so Jamaica playing Amy starts very light pinks, and then by the end is in these like beautiful, rich, like reddish browns to kind of help enhance her growth. So yeah, really overall, tried to make it a cohesive design, had brilliant people along with us. And I do think that it kind of creates this sense of things that mold and flow together, and you have an understanding of the themes, even though I don't think audiences are walking away going, oh, Beth was wearing purple because she's a violet, and that's okay.
I was just about to speak to about the audience. I feel like those layers are clearly felt in the production. They may not be able to articulate all of those elements, but I feel like that's what makes it feel so homely. It feels so like everybody feels connected. Like, the night that we saw the show, the audience around us was just moved. Definitely, I heard sniffles. I heard a lot of moments where people were just feeling very emotional about it. But, as I walked away from it, I felt like all these elements were there too and well thought of too. I've seen other productions at Hedgerow, and I thought it was great how you were able to segment all of those scenes while keeping everything on stage. I liked the transition from the old piano to the new piano, and all that was really nice to see. And those layers of elevation really gave us, okay, this is different, as we're in this space now. But I think it's important for us to hear all of these elements because, whether you walk into the theater with this knowledge or afterwards you gather this knowledge, you start to build on top of your experience and think like, wow, I didn't make the connection that they were all elements of flowers. But I'm also thinking about in the community, in the theatrical productions I've seen, Philadelphia and Pennsylvania in general is very horticultural space. And so to have floral elements in the productions just really contribute to that, just pulling the outside in as well, but also giving us a sense of kind of space and freedom that comes with being surrounded by plants. All of that just adds to wonderful layers and elements of this show.
Add to knowing that Matthew is here and we're talking about the music in the piece. I do think that for this show, it made a difference to not have any sound that was recorded and piped through speakers. Because when you think about like the function of sound design overall, it's to help create the world and environment that we're in. And so from jump, we're saying like, this is a world that is created by us being able to like breathe and be in space together and share music. It's something that's so emotional and vulnerable. And the cast found that too. And I'm just so grateful for all of Matt's work on it as like composer and music researcher and arranger and coach. Like it's 4 jobs in one. And I think that it really establishes for the audience from the beginning this sense of like, we're sitting in the room together and we're really able to be connected. And I think that matters to lay the foundation for being open to the story and being open to kind of going on that emotional journey with folks.
Yeah. Also speaks to the multifaceted talent that we have in our community. Matthew is just one example of many artists who wear multiple hats and can enter into a space with all of that. It's something that we all know and appreciate, but something that is worth being reminded of. Everybody listening, we have super talented people here in Philadelphia. You should definitely keep an eye on everything they do and go out and support when you see their names on production lists. For you both, are there elements of this production that resonate with you the most? Like you look forward to this scene, or you spend so much time on this and this makes you feel a little bit more deeply about the piece?
I'll start. I would say when I heard it was happening and Abby mentioned that she was working on it, Little Women has been a favorite story of mine. And I was really inspired to join Abby on this journey of creating the music and creating this version of Little Women. I had taken my younger sister, to see Little Women, the musical on Broadway. And this happened 20 years ago now. It would first premiered in 2005. And it was her first Broadway show. I was so excited to like share this side of me, like to share theater with her in this way. She was 12 at the time, I believe. And I just remember both of us were really weeping throughout the story. I didn't really know the story before I saw the musical. And then after I, saw the movies and dived a little deeper into the story. So the sense of family and how the sense of belonging and how everyone is different, like Abby was saying, it's just a very important story. And I think to be able to tell it musically in a different way, I was just really inspired to jump on and be a part of that. And I love how Abby had this idea to use the actors as musicians, and how, like she was saying, is so vulnerable, and it is such a moment where you all need to be connected in order to play the music. You have to play it together at the same time. And so it just brings them together, and hopefully the audience feels that and comes together with them in those moments. One of my favorite moments of our production is in the beginning. We get to hear Olive play the flute first. Beth plays the flute, and then Marissa as Jo plays the clarinet and joins her in a harmony of the theme that I wrote, the musical theme that I wrote. And then as the scene starts, it transitions seamlessly into the guitar, the piano, and the bass from James, Catherine, and Bob. And I just think that gave me chills every time I saw it, because it's just so beautiful how the two sisters start the story musically, and then it's passed over and it's continued seamlessly. And it like brings the whole world to life as they begin the dialogue of the piece.
Okay. Oh, and you forgot to mention that, 20 years ago, you took your sister to Little Women. You were able to bring her to this show with her daughter.
Yeah, it's going to make me cry now. That was a very special moment that she could come and see the story in a different way, and see my growth and to see her growth. She has a daughter of her own, and she was able to see the story. And it was amazing. After there was the little opening night reception, and I was just in awe of my niece, Eliza, and how bold she was to go up to the actors and talk to them about the story, and talk to Abby about her direction. And she had a favorite character. And so she was really listening, and really, it was just a beautiful moment to have them there. And I'm so glad it was like a full circle for me to share that with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Abby, what about your moment?
Well, there are so many. And
It's like darlings. You can't pick one.
Totally can't pick. I really, just the whole time we were making this piece, culturally, we think about what especially young women and girls like, and that gets put into like a separate category that is a little bit lesser than pop music, romance novels, all of these things that are primarily liked by young women and girls. They're not like real culture. And I feel like Little Women and Alcott's work has been part of this conversation for a long time. And it's a part of the play too. This is like a sentimental ladies piece, right? And so for me telling this, it's just like, it matters. What young women and girls think matters. It is just as important as what anybody else thinks, wants, feels. So going really into, we're exploring girlhood. We're doing that with seriousness and with consideration. We're taking it seriously. We're treating it like it's important. I feel like that was really important to me throughout. There's two moments I'll say that I feel like get me almost every time. And it's the generational recognition, right? So there's a moment in the script, there are a couple moments in the script where Marmee looks at her daughters and sees something new in them, and like the emotion in that, and the emotion in, now I'm going to get teary about it, but being able to look at a young person and watch them grow up and like be seen in that and held in that is so beautiful. Again, she does it a couple times throughout, but one moment Jo cuts all her hair off to try to help the family when their dad is sick, and all that Marmee says is, "My little women," and gives them a hug. And it's just like this beautiful recognition of growing up that's so gorgeous. And then there's a moment as well in the music that plays after the show that is what we worked on and what we created. Bob brought in John Lennon's Happy Christmas, War is Over as his audition song, and we created some of that set list by asking the cast what songs they wanted to sing or were excited about. And we think about them as being like 50% character and 50% cast member. What would they be singing? How would they be interacting with that piece? And Bob as Mr. Lawrence and Leo as Laurie, his grandson, sing it together. And that one, I cry every time. The words of the song are "War is over if you want it, war is over now." As that's happening, it makes me feel so emotional because also throughout this piece, the Civil War is happening while these young people are growing up. I know for me, war has been happening my entire growing up, and I'm trying to have an awareness of the world and do things that will be better for the world and will be civically engaged. And I'm also changing as a person, growing up as a person, having struggles that are happening on a day to day that are my girly things that I'm managing that also matter. Both of the things are true. And I see that in these women in the story too. And being able to sing that and hear that at the end, I think that the best thing you can do in theater is start to create the world that you want to see. And so, like, I would want to live in this world of Little Women. There's still problems. There's still things that are hard. There's still challenges. It's not fake. It's not saccharine, but there is this sense of community and sweetness and seeing and caring for one another and being held and loving your neighbors and doing all that from a really genuine place. And so by the time we've lived through all of the ups and downs of the story, and then we get to that moment where the whole cast is singing those words, a heart every time. My parents both cried at that part too. They saw it last weekend and they were like, "Oh, the John Lennon." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I know. I'm sorry." And not sorry. Yeah.
Wow.
There's so much in it.
That's beautiful. And yes, that end moment pulls everybody in. All of those songs came from your artists and they resonate with key people in the audience. Just think about, I think Jamaica as Amy saying, "I want a hippopotamus for Christmas." That's that one. The thing is, here in Philadelphia, B101 plays Christmas, around the clock, and all of these songs are always in there, and they make you just feel more local too, as well. All those choices that were pulled in at the end. I'm wondering, before we leave, since Matthew is sitting at his piano, if you would be able to share your theme with us
Sure.
before we close out.
All right. This is a little bit of the theme that is played throughout the piece. Hopefully you can hear it.
That was wonderful. If it doesn't sound as fruitful in your ears as you were riding the bus, it was coming through a pair of AirPods,
Yes.
but you could hear it. It almost sounded faint in a past storytelling way. It sort of felt like the Ghosts of Christmas Past moment.
Yes. Go hear it
There.
for real. Go hear it for
Absolutely.
real at the Hedgerow Theatre.
One more thing before I let you both go. Like, what do you hope an audience takes away from this experience of Little Women?
I hope they take away a sense of belonging, like I was saying, a sense of family, um, a sense of knowing that even if you haven't really connected with someone you love, there's time to do that, and you should make that a little more urgent. I just love there's a couple dark moments between Joe and Amy throughout the piece, but there is still a sense of that they really love each other, and there is an understanding that they are different, and it's okay to not be perfect in your relationship. You don't have to love everything about your sister, but there is still a sense that they are important to each other and they helped each other become who they are. So I hope there's a sense of forgiveness that people take away too. And yeah, it's a beautiful story.
I mean, mine is pretty much the same. I hope that folks leave wanting to spend time with their loved ones and wanting to have real connections with their loved ones, where they are seeing them where they are, meeting them where they are, and celebrating that. That's my hope.
And that's a good place to leave it. As I said at the beginning of this chat, if you didn't buy your tickets already, what were you waiting on? You had all this time in this chat to buy tickets. You should have gotten your confirmation by now. If you didn't, that's fine. I'll tell you again. You want to go to Hedgerow Theatre, and that's theater spelled RE.org, and get tickets for Little Women by Kate Hamill, adapted from the novel by Louisa May Alcott, directed by Abby Weissman, with this wonderful team of artists, including Matthew Mastronardi as music director, sound designer, and composer. It is on stage through December 28th, so you definitely have time before the holidays and after the holiday to see this show. Abby Weissman, Matthew Mastronardi, thank you so much for taking the time to take us into the world of Little Women, this adaptation. I think the audience that we were with felt seen in this piece. And, that emotion was genuine, and it was beautiful to just be around so many people resonating with what we were all experiencing on that stage. And for the many iterations of Little Women we've seen over the years, this one felt timely in a way that didn't like aggressively modernize the piece. It just sort of highlighted these moments that were already there to say like, wow, yeah, that is this sense of identity has always been there, and figuring out where they fit. And in these spaces, in these moments where a character doesn't feel like they're amongst everyone equally, I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And, I hope those who haven't seen it get out there and sort of experience what we've all experienced on the Hedgerow stage. So happy holidays to you all. And thanks again for having this chat with us. It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much,
much,
Darnell.
Darnell.